Ever try to build something with, like, really bad instructions?
Oh, yeah.
I once tried to put together one of those, bookshelves
Mm-hmm.
with directions from a friend, and let's just say it ended up more like a bike rack. Like, seriously, avant-garde bike rack.
Yeah, I can see how that could be a problem.
Yeah.
Not quite what you're going for. And it's
Ah.
something we see in software projects all the time.
All the time, right. And it's like building the wrong thing,
Yeah.
recipe for disaster, whether you're building an app or a bookshelf. So today we're diving into requirements management. It's all about making sure we're building the right thing from the start.
Right.
And we've got just the expert to guide us, someone who's, well, you've seen it all in the software development world, right?
You could say that. I've definitely seen my fair share of projects that went a bit sideways, usually because those initial requirements were, shall we say, a little on the vague side.
Yeah, and our source even gives this great example. Someone comes to you and says, okay, I need an app, and it's got to cluck at data and then put it into a spreadsheet. Sounds pretty simple, right?
It does, doesn't it? Sounds deceptively simple.
Right.
And that's where we have to do a little detective work. Because users, they're experts in their own fields, right?
Mhm.
But they often think in terms of solutions they already know, like, oh, a spreadsheet, that'll work.
Right. Familiar territory.
Right. Instead of thinking about, the root problem they're actually trying to solve. So a good requirement, it's not about jumping to solutions. It's about digging into the why. Why do you need this data in the first place? What's the actual pain point you're trying to solve?
So how do we get to those deeper needs then? What's step one in this detective work?
That is where requirements management really comes in handy. It gives us this whole toolbox of techniques, different ways to really dig in and gather those requirements.
Okay, so it's like we're opening up our detective's toolkit to really figure out what users need.
Exactly.
Love it. And speaking of tools, our source outlines a whole bunch. We've got questionnaires, brainstorming sessions, even just straight up observing how people work.
Yeah, it's true. There's a bunch of them, and they each have their place. Like questionnaires. Those
Yeah.
are fantastic for casting a wide net, right?
Right. Get those initial thoughts down.
Exactly, especially if you're dealing with a lot of people.
Makes sense.
But you don't want to just scratch the surface here.
Okay.
It's not just asking, hey, what features do you want?
Mhm.
You got to be a little more clever with it.
Ah.
This is where the source talks about asking those why questions.
Yeah.
Really dig in a little.
Okay, I like that.
Like, what bottleneck will this remove for you? Or
Mhm.
how would this make your workflow smoother? Get them thinking about the impact, not just a list of features.
So it's about the motivation, the desired outcome, not just the what, but the why. It's like going to the doctor. You don't just say, give me pills.
Right.
You explain what's going on.
Exactly. Figure out the root cause. And speaking of digging deeper, another method our source talks about is brainstorming, which I gotta say could be a really powerful tool.
Okay. Brainstorming. I'll be honest, I kind of have PTSD from some group projects back in college.
Yeah, brainstorming can definitely go off the rails if it's not done right. But when you've got a good facilitator, someone who can keep things on track, it can unlock a gold mine of ideas.
Okay, so it's about like structured creativity.
Exactly. And the source actually goes into some really practical tips on how to facilitate these sessions effectively.
Oh, nice. So it's not just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Not quite, no. It's more like targeted spaghetti throwing. But sometimes you need an even more in-depth look at what's going on, especially for those bigger projects. And that's where observation comes in.
Okay, so we're talking like going full on Sherlock Holmes,
Uh.
observing the user in their natural habitat.
Precisely. Because think about it. You can ask people what they do. You can even brainstorm with them about their processes.
Yeah.
But sometimes the most valuable insights come from actually seeing how they work in the wild.
I love that, in the wild. It's like that saying, people don't always do what they say and they don't always say what they do, or something like that.
It's totally true. And you can catch those workarounds, those bottlenecks, those things they don't even realize they're doing.
The unspoken struggles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've got questionnaires, brainstorming, observation, and then the source mentions prototyping.
Which is cool,
Mhm.
because now we're not just talking about stuff, we're actually building something tangible.
Right. Like instead of telling someone about the cake, you're letting them try a bite. Exactly. Even if it's a very rough early version, it's way more powerful to put something real in front of someone and say, okay, what do you think? What's working? What's not?
It's all about early feedback, right? Course correction.
Exactly. Which brings us back to that whole agile approach the source talks about.
Right. Agile, which, if I'm remembering correctly, is all about staying flexible, iterating as you go, rather than like one big reveal at the end.
You got it. It's about adapting to changing needs and feedback. So you're constantly testing, refining, incorporating those learnings as you go.
So it's less like unveiling a masterpiece and more like, I don't know, a work in progress. You're constantly getting feedback, making adjustments.
Exactly. Think of it like a chef tasting the soup as they go, adding a pinch of this, a dash of that.
Okay, I like that analogy. But that probably makes it tough to say, okay, it'll be done by this date and it'll cost this much. Right.
That's the trade-off for sure. Agile's great when things are kind of up in the air.
Mhm.
Requirements might change, new information pops up.
Right. Makes sense.
But yeah, it's definitely harder to give those hard deadlines or fixed budgets up front. It's about finding that balance.
Makes sense. You can't always predict every bump in the road. But how would this actually work for, someone listening right now? Let's say you're building that website to show off your photography. Listener name.
Perfect example. So instead of just asking, what should this website have, which, let's be honest, might just give you a laundry list of technical terms.
Right, jargon overload.
Exactly. You want to start with the why. What are you hoping to achieve with this site? What's the story you want to tell through your photography?
So it's less about the features and more about what's your vision? Who are you trying to reach with your work?
Exactly. Get to the heart of it. Who's your audience? What kind of impact do you want your work to have on them? Then you can start brainstorming those solutions together.
Okay, so it's about collaboration, understanding the why behind the what. It's not just, I need a website. It's, I need a website that does this for my photography business.
Exactly. And that's where that whole iterative approach can really shine. You might start with a really basic prototype, just something to get feedback on.
Right, like a first draft.
Exactly. Show it to some fellow photographers,
Yeah.
potential clients,
Yeah.
even friends and family. Get their honest thoughts. Then you take that feedback and refine, refine, refine.
So you're constantly improving, making sure the site truly reflects your vision and resonates with the people you're trying to reach.
Exactly.
So to wrap things up, it seems like the big takeaway here is that whether you're building a website or launching a product or even just organizing a team event, it all starts with understanding the real need. And that takes clear communication, active listening, and the flexibility to adapt along the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Now, here's a thought-provoking question for you, listener name. How do you build that flexibility into your plans while still keeping your long-term goals in sight? It's a balancing act for sure, but finding that sweet spot can make all the difference.
It's a journey, that's for sure.
It really is. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of requirements gathering. Remember, building the right thing starts with understanding the real needs. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and until next time, keep diving deep.